Heart Fluff XL, romance meets Nihongo. Before that, if you love visual novel story-rich or otome games, or if you want to learn Japanese with otome games and experience some heart fluffy romance, I suggest you to subscribe to this channel because you are in the right place. Kanji is hard. Yes, I felt that too the first time I wanted to learn Japanese. If you know me, you'll know I wanted to learn Japanese just so I could read otome games. That happened almost 11 years ago. I wanted to start learning Japanese, and during high school, we actually had a year of Japanese class where we practiced hiragana and katakana. I did well in that class. I even bought a book focused on learning Japanese, but then I found out that in order to understand Japanese, I also had to learn kanji. And I was like, ain't no way I'm gonna learn that. It looks so complex and difficult. I mean, I wasn't even good at Chinese. I always got bad grades in that class because our teacher expected us to memorize hundreds of Chinese characters from just one book. So yeah, I ended up getting bad grades every time. That experience crushed my confidence and I buried my attention to learn Japanese. I felt like I would never be able to do it. Fast forward to last year, I finally started learning Japanese again, which I already shared in my previous video because I started to feel hopeful again. I felt like I could do it. As I said in that video, I began learning kanji just by memorizing the shapes. I didn't feel the need to write them down because I simply didn't want to, and it felt like just recognizing the shapes was enough. Honestly, that method was helpful because now I can read Japanese text more easily than before, and I understand intermediate level Japanese conversation. At that time, after learning 20 new kanji along with vocabulary per day for about a week, I dove straight into Japanese immersion. I made my own custom deck based on otome games I played, and guess what I did during my first immersion session? Exactly what most beginner learners do. We assume every kanji in the dialogue is equally important, so we put all of them into our deck. That's exactly what I did during my immersion with Dance with Devils game. And it's not just me. My friends who are also learning Japanese did the same thing at first because we didn't know which kanji were actually important. I'd be like, this one's important. Oh, this one too. I need to put them all. But after a few months, I noticed that I'd added kanji that were rarely used in other otome games or even in Japanese YouTube videos. For example, this kanji, kimoni meizuru, which means to engrave in one's heart. I found that in Hanayakanari game, but I've barely seen it anywhere else. It's not a commonly used kanji. I finally saw it again in Kengakimi, which makes me think this kanji might only be used in historical settings. Then came another challenge. I realized not every kanji is pronounced the same, even when they look identical. In fact, kanji has multiple readings and meanings. For example, this kanji, kanemochi, which means wealthy person, and this kanji, kiniro, which means a golden color. It's literally the same kanji, right? But the pronunciation is different. Of course, the more you immerse yourself in the language, the more you develop a sense of how to pronounce things correctly. But even now, it's still a challenge for me. Another issue I ran into was this. Remember how I said I memorized kanji just by recognizing their shapes? Well, it helped, but I didn't realize how many kanji look so similar. That made things a bit tricky. I usually focus on the first part of the kanji when memorizing, but I later found kanji that start the same way. For example, this kanji, kagami, which means mirror, hari, which means needle, and kusari, which means chains. Look at the front part. They're the same, right? I can't even count how many times I mixed them up. Even their pronunciation are kind of similar. Kagami, hari, kusari. And trust me, there are so many more like that. And the last challenge for now is As I continue to add new words gradually to my custom tags, reviewing them has become overwhelming. I didn't know which kanji I needed to review. I wanted to review everything because I was scared I would forget them, especially the ones I don't encounter often in immersion. At the same time, I felt like I was wasting time reviewing kanji I already knew, but I was afraid, so I kept reviewing them anyway. So yeah, those are my struggles, or maybe I should say my mistakes that you should be aware of. You might even be going through some of the same things if you're also learning kanji. So now, the big question is, what is the solution? How do we learn kanji smarter? Of course, before jumping into any kanji learning methods, make sure you've mastered hiragana and katakana. No romaji, you really need to get used to hiragana and katakana because in all dialects, in visual novels, otome games, anime, street signs, etc., they always use hiragana and katakana alongside kanji, never romaji. It's also harder for others to communicate with you if you only use romaji. I remember there was a time someone messaged me in romaji and it was honestly hard for me to grasp what they meant at first. For hiragana and katakana, you just need to remember the shapes. It's not as intense as kanji. If you just want to understand Japanese, this is a good starting point. Now, for the problem of not knowing which kanji are important to learn, you need to focus on the most common kanji that appear in everyday life. You can also figure this out naturally during your Japanese immersion. Pay attention to the kanji that show up frequently and add those to your flashcards. For example, I often encountered fushigi, which means strange, and funiki, which means atmosphere, a lot in otome games. They're used all the time. Technically, there are 50,000 kanji, but don't worry, you don't need to memorize them all to be fluent. To be considered fluent in Japanese, you only need to know about 1,500 to 2,500 kanji, which is around the N2 to N1 level. There's also something called Joyo kanji, which is an official list of regular used kanji designated by the Japanese government. This can be a super helpful resource to guide your learning. Next, let's talk about how to make learning kanji easier by learning through radicals. Now, this is the fun part. Once I discovered this, learning kanji started to feel like solving a puzzle. Radicals are the smaller components or elements that make up more complex kanji characters. For example, kanji with this radical, which means say or word, where you can find it in all of these kanji. Kanji characters can seem super complex, but once you start recognizing radicals, they become easier to remember and identify. You can even guess the meaning of unfamiliar kanji just based on the radicals they contain, which helps you expand your vocabulary more naturally. There are 215 radicals in total, but don't worry, you don't need to memorize all of them. Some are much more common than others, so focus on those. The next challenge we want to solve is handling similar looking kanji. Let's take example of kagami, mirror, and hari, needle. To memorize them more easily, I recommend breaking them down into components and using mnemonics. Mnemonics are visual stories or images you create to help associate meaning with a character. The more creative, the better. Humans are visual beings, so using imagery makes memorizing way easier. Here's an example. This kagami kanji, which means mirror, is based from this radical, which means metal, plus this kanji, which we can visualize it like a man proudly checking his appearance. So when we combine them, imagine a man standing proudly in front of a mirror made of metal. That image makes it so much easier to remember, right? Okay, one more example from this kanji, hari. It's also from this radical, which means metal, plus this cross kanji. And we can visualize it like two crossing needles forming a sharp shape. Visualize two sharp metal needles forming a cross. That becomes your visual cue for needle. Once you use techniques like this, kanji becomes much easier to understand and way less intimidating. The next thing that can really make kanji learning easier is studying kanji along with vocabulary. When you learn vocabulary and kanji at the same time, you start recognizing patterns and can often guess the meaning of the kanji within words. I've experienced this myself. For example, when you see this kanji, saiko, saiyaku, saite, they all share the same kanji, which you might naturally look up out of curiosity and discover it means most or highest or extreme. Once you know that, it becomes so much easier to recognize and remember this meaning in new words that contain it, especially when example sentences are provided. Now, imagine having a tool that provides everything you need to master kanji and even solves the challenge we talked about earlier. Thankfully, I found it, and it is called MochiKanji Learn Japanese. MochiKanji is an app that offers kanji and vocabulary courses from N5 to N2 levels. It even provides specialized vocabulary commonly used in fields like nursing and IT, which is especially helpful if you're planning to work or learn more about those areas. Even includes specific courses based on popular textbooks like Minna no Nihongo and Genki. So, if you've already been studying with those books, MochiKanji has the kanji and vocabulary you need. I remember someone left a comment on one of my previous videos asking me how many kanji do we need to surpass N3. And now I can confidently say MochiKanji already has it all laid out for you. The vocabulary and kanji lessons in MochiKanji include furigana and are designed as flashcards with audio, images, meanings, and example sentence. You can even choose to slow down the pronunciation. And if you've already learned a word, you can simply skip it, saving time and energy. I found this really reassuring and efficient. MochiKanji also offers fun quizzes for each new word to help you remember vocabulary more easily. And remember the challenge we discussed earlier? Not knowing which kanji to review or being afraid of forgetting them? MochiKanji answers this problem with two powerful features, the golden time review system and 5 levels of memorizations. As many studies have shown, the best time to review something is right before your brain is about to forget it. That's when your memory retention increases significantly. Based on that principle, or so-called spaced repetition, MochiKanji's golden time feature calculates exactly that moment based on your learning history and reminds you to review at the perfect time, so you don't have to waste time over reviewing what you already know. Moreover, MochiKanji also classified your learned words into 5 levels of memorization, from level 1 to 5. Here's how the 5 levels of memorization work. Thanks to this system, you can spend less time on kanji you already know and focus more on the ones you find difficult to remember. When it's time to review, MochiKanji offers a variety of review quizzes, including reading, writing, and listening, so your learning becomes more well-rounded. And honestly, it makes the whole review process so much fun and efficient. They also provide a kanji isolation game, which helps you recognize kanji that are commonly used across levels. You can also practice writing with detailed struck order instructions, making it easier to remember. And remember the mnemonics technique I've mentioned before? Yes, MochiKanji includes that for each kanji too, so it's easier to memorize meanings in a more visual and creative way. Even better, MochiKanji includes the Joyo kanji, the official list of regularly used kanji as designated by the Japanese government. Isn't that amazing? It's incredibly helpful. Also, remember how I said not every kanji shares the same pronunciation even if they look similar? MochiKanji covers that too by teaching you onyomi and kunyomi. Onyomi is Chinese derived readings often used in compound words like kiniro. And kunyomi is native Japanese readings often used with hiragana such as kanemochi. While there are exceptions, this trick alone will help you read Japanese texts more accurately and confidently. Another awesome feature is the Mochi Dictionary, which allows you to search and save over 10,000 vocabulary words, and you can add them to your notebook and review them during your personalized golden time. To download the app, simply head to the App Store, Google Play, or its website and search for MochiKanji Learn Japanese and hit download. Now that we have uncovered how to handle the challenge of learning kanji, what's next? It's time to surround ourselves with Japanese content every single day, so we can get familiar with how vocabulary and kanji are used in real natural contexts. What kind of content do you enjoy the most? Do you like reading manga or light novels, watching anime, playing visual novels or otome games, or maybe writing your diary in Japanese? Choose what works best for you because everyone learns differently, and what excites you will keep you going. And remember to practice every day. Be consistent. Even if you're extremely busy, just spend around 50 to 30 minutes a day for immersion or even to review your flashcards. Especially with an app like MochiKanji. It's right there on your phone, so you can do it anywhere while waiting for food, commuting, or even the toilet. No more excuses, okay? If you're really eager, you'll find a way. I started learning Japanese just because I wanted to read otome games since I'm totally in love with that genre. So ask yourself, what is your purpose for learning Japanese? That motivation will fuel your consistency. Another thing you need to know is, kanji is actually your best friend. One of the things I never expected was just how much kanji helped me understand Japanese way more than hiragana or katakana alone. I used to think, why do we need kanji? Isn't hiragana enough? But then I came across to this sentence. You can see it's all hiragana and I had to read it twice just to figure out what it meant. Now, compare that to this. Boom! Instant clarity. Kanji works like a highlighter. It separates words, gives visual cues, and removes confusion. Without kanji, everything blends together, and your brain has to work twice as hard to guess where one word ends and the next begins. So yeah, turns out kanji isn't the enemy. It's actually our best friend once we take the time to get to know it. So let's start building that friendship because kanji will be our companion throughout our journey. It will make learning Japanese so much clearer, richer, and more enjoyable. And that's it! I hope this video and my personal journey help you avoid some of the mistakes I made in the beginning. Now it's your turn. What is your journey with learning kanji like? What are your ups and downs? Share your story in the comments below so other learners can see they're not alone. And if you want to check out how I learned Japanese through otome games, feel free to explore the playlist below. And I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!